The clinking of crystal against crystal was a familiar symphony in our home. It was a sound I usually found comforting, a gentle counterpoint to the soft jazz that always seemed to drift through our apartment. Tonight, however, the music felt discordant, the clinking glasses sharp and accusatory. A chill, entirely unrelated to the crisp autumn air filtering through the open balcony doors, settled over me. I watched as Vivian, my wife, moved with an almost balletic grace, refilling our champagne flutes. She was stunning, as always. Her auburn hair, usually cascading down her back, was pulled up tonight, emphasizing the elegant line of her neck. The diamond pendant I had given her on our 10th anniversary caught the light, sparkling with an almost defiant brilliance. I had always prided myself on my taste, my ability to appreciate beauty in its myriad forms, and Vivian was, undoubtedly, my masterpiece. Or so I had thought. There was a subtle shift in her demeanor tonight, something I couldn't quite place. A heightened flush on her cheeks, perhaps, or a certain sparkle in her emerald eyes that wasn't directed at me. She seemed distracted. Her gaze kept drifting towards her phone, which lay face down on the marble coffee table between us. It was a new phone, a sleek, minimalist model she had been particularly insistent on getting. She claimed it was for work, that her old phone was becoming unreliable. I hadn't questioned it. I rarely questioned Vivian. She had a way of presenting things, a quiet confidence that made her pronouncements seem like indisputable truths. We had been celebrating, or at least I thought we were, a successful project, a new commission that had just come through. It was a big deal, a significant step in my career as an architect. I had envisioned this evening as a celebration of our shared success, a quiet moment of intimacy amidst the whirlwind of our busy lives. I had even picked up her favorite flowers, white lilies, their intoxicating scent filling the apartment. But Vivian seemed distant. Her responses to my enthusiastic descriptions of the project were brief, almost perfunctory. She nodded, smiled, but her eyes held a faraway look, as if she were present in body but absent in mind. I tried to shake off the unease that was creeping into my heart. Perhaps I was just tired, I reasoned. The pressure of the new project was considerable, and I hadn't been sleeping well lately. I took a long sip of my champagne, the bubbles tickling my nose. So, I began, trying to steer the conversation back to us. What did you do today? Vivian hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something guilt crossing her face before she composed herself. Oh, she said, her voice a little too bright. Just the usual. Met with a client, had lunch with Isabel. She trailed off, her gaze once again drifting towards her phone. My heart began to pound in my chest. A cold dread, like a shadow, fell over me. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that something was terribly wrong. The feeling was visceral, a gut feeling that screamed at me to pay attention. I watched Vivian, her beautiful face illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights, and a terrible thought took root in my mind. A thought that, until this moment, I had never dared to entertain. A thought that whispered of betrayal. The champagne suddenly tasted like ash in my mouth. The elegant apartment, usually a sanctuary of shared moments and quiet intimacy, now felt like a gilded cage. I watched Vivian, her profile sharp against the backdrop of the city lights, and a wave of nausea washed over me. The lilies, their sweet fragrance now cloying and suffocating, seemed to mock me with their innocent beauty. How could I have been so blind, so trusting? Had I been living in a fool's paradise, oblivious to the cracks in the foundation of our seemingly perfect life? I forced myself to take another sip of champagne, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I needed to think clearly to assess the situation. Panic wouldn't help. I had always prided myself on my logical, analytical mind. It was a trait that had served me well in my career, allowing me to design complex structures, to anticipate challenges and find elegant solutions. Now, I needed to apply that same logic to my personal life, to dissect the subtle clues, the unspoken words, the lingering silences that had begun to permeate our relationship. Vivian's behavior had been changing over the past few months. She had become more distant, more preoccupied. Our conversations had dwindled to polite exchanges, devoid of the easy intimacy we had once shared. She had started spending more time out of the apartment, claiming work commitments, late meetings, networking events. I hadn't questioned her. I trusted her. Or rather, I had trusted her. The new phone, the hushed conversation she had when she thought I wasn't listening, the way she flinched when I touched her unexpectedly. It all clicked into place now, forming a disturbing mosaic of suspicion. The pieces fit together too perfectly, painting a picture I didn't want to see. But I couldn't ignore it any longer. The knot in my stomach tightened. A cold, hard ball of dread. I needed proof. I couldn't act on mere suspicion. I needed concrete evidence to confirm my fears. But how? I couldn't simply confront Vivian. She was too skilled at deflection, too adept at weaving a tapestry of plausible excuses. I needed a different approach, a more strategic, more architectural approach. My mind, always attuned to patterns and structures, began to formulate a plan. I thought of the city, its hidden corners, its secret pathways. I thought of the way information flowed, the whispers and rumors that circulated through its intricate network. I thought of the way I could use my knowledge, my connections, my skills to uncover the truth. I finished my champagne, the glass feeling heavy in my hand. I stood up, the chair scraping against the polished floor. "I'm going to step out for a bit," I said, my voice sounding strangely hollow, even to my own ears. Vivian looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Where are you going?" "Just for a walk," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I need some air." I walked towards the door, leaving the lilies and the half-empty champagne glasses behind. I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights blurring through the film of unshed tears that had gathered in my eyes. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew that I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer, trapped in the suffocating silence of my suspicions. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The city embraced me with its familiar chaos, the honking of cars, the distant sirens, the murmur of conversations spilling out from crowded bars and restaurants. I walked aimlessly, my mind racing, trying to process the turmoil within me. I had always been a man of control, a master of my own destiny. But now, I felt adrift, caught in a current I couldn't control. I found myself drawn to the river, its dark waters reflecting the city lights like a shattered mirror. I leaned against the railing, the cold metal biting into my palms. I watched the boats glide silently along the river, their lights creating shimmering trails in the water. It was a scene I had always found peaceful, but tonight, it felt ominous, a reflection of my own fractured reality. I needed to focus. I needed a plan. My architectural training had taught me the importance of meticulous planning, of anticipating every contingency. I couldn't afford to make mistakes. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about reclaiming my life, my sense of self. I started by observing Vivian. I paid attention to her routines, her habits, her patterns. I noticed the way she lingered a little too long at the flower stall on her way home from work, the way she always ordered the same cappuccino at the cafe near our apartment, the way she spent hours browsing through fashion magazines, her eyes lingering on the designer dresses she could no longer afford. I also started paying attention to her phone. I learned to recognize the subtle changes in her posture when she received a message from him. I observed the way her eyes lit up, the way a smile played on her lips as she typed her replies. It was a subtle dance, a secret language they shared, and it filled me with a rage I had never known before. I delved deeper, using my network of contacts to gather information. I learned about the exclusive gym Vivian had recently joined, the one frequented by celebrities and socialites. I learned about the charity galas she had been attending, the ones where she would inevitably run into him. I learned about the late-night rendezvous, the clandestine meetings in dimly lit bars and secluded restaurants. The more I learned, the more the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The picture that emerged was one of betrayal, of deceit, of a carefully constructed facade that hid a sordid reality. And at the center of it all was him, the man who had stolen my wife, the man who had shattered my world. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew his type. He was the kind of man who thrived on attention, who reveled in the spotlight. He was charming, charismatic, and utterly ruthless. He was the kind of man who could seduce a woman with a single glance, who could make her believe that she was the only one who mattered. And Vivian, my beautiful, intelligent Vivian, had fallen for his charade. I felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to confront him, to expose his lies. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. I needed something more, something that would cut deeper, something that would leave a lasting mark. I needed revenge. And as I stood there by the river, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, a plan began to take shape. A plan that was as intricate and as elegant as any building I had ever designed. A plan that would expose their betrayal, shatter their illusions, and leave them with nothing but the ashes of their deceit. My work has always been my refuge. The clean lines, the precise calculations, the tangible manifestation of an idea. These were the things that grounded me, that gave me a sense of purpose. Now, with my personal life in ruins, I found myself seeking solace in my profession more than ever. But my work was no longer just a source of comfort. It was becoming a weapon, a tool for revenge. I immersed myself in a new project, a public art installation commissioned by the city council. It was a prestigious project, one that would be seen by thousands of people. On the surface, it was a simple concept, a series of interconnected pavilions, each one designed to showcase a different aspect of the city's history and culture. But beneath the surface, I was weaving a more sinister narrative, a hidden layer of meaning that only I knew about. I started by researching Vivian's lover. I knew he was a prominent figure in the city, someone who moved in the same social circles as Vivian. It wasn't long before I found him Anton, a renowned art critic, known for his sharp wit and his even sharper tongue. He was a fixture at gallery openings, a darling of the cultural elite. His picture was often splashed across the pages of society magazines, his pronouncements on art and culture treated as gospel. I studied his movements, his habits, his preferences. I learned about the galleries he frequented, the restaurants he favored, the routes he took through the city. I even managed to get my hands on his schedule, a detailed itinerary of his appointments and engagements. With this information in hand, I began to design the pavilions. Each one was strategically placed to intersect with Anton's daily life, to become a silent observer of his movements. I incorporated hidden cameras and microphones, seamlessly integrated into the structure of the pavilions. They were invisible to the naked eye, but they captured everything: his conversations, his encounters, his secret rendezvous with Vivian. The first pavilion was located in a small park near Anton's apartment. It was a simple structure, made of glass and steel, designed to blend in with its surroundings. But inside, I had created a labyrinth of mirrors, reflecting and distorting the images captured by the hidden cameras. The effect was disorienting, unsettling. It was as if the pavilion itself was watching, judging, condemning. The second pavilion was situated in a busy shopping district, a place where Anton often went for lunch or to browse the high-end boutiques. This pavilion was more elaborate, featuring a series of interactive displays that invited visitors to explore the city's history. But hidden within the displays were screens that subtly displayed images of Anton and Vivian together, their faces distorted, their intimacy exposed. The third pavilion was located in the heart of the city's cultural district, just a stone's throw from the gallery where Anton worked. This pavilion was the most ambitious of all. It was a towering structure, made of polished marble and shimmering glass. Inside, I had created a sound installation, a symphony of city noises interwoven with snippets of conversations captured by the hidden microphones. The voices were distorted, fragmented, but they were unmistakably Anton and Vivian's. As I worked on the pavilions, I felt a growing sense of satisfaction. I was creating something beautiful, something meaningful, but I was also creating something dangerous, something that had the power to destroy. I was playing with fire and I knew it, but the desire for revenge was too strong, the pain of betrayal too deep. I had to see this through to the end. The installation of the pavilions was a logistical challenge, but I thrived on the complexity. It was like conducting a symphony, each element needing to be perfectly timed and coordinated. I worked tirelessly, driven by a relentless energy that seemed to defy the exhaustion I felt. Sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. My mind was consumed by the project, by the intricate web of deceit I was unraveling. Vivian, oblivious to my plans, continued her affair with Anton. They met in secret, their passion fueled by the thrill of forbidden love. They frequented exclusive restaurants, attended private parties, and stole moments of intimacy in hidden corners of the city. Their world was one of champagne and caviar, of designer clothes and expensive art. It was a world I had once been a part of, but now I was an outsider, a silent observer watching from the shadows. The hidden cameras captured their every move. I watched them laugh, kiss, and whisper sweet nothings to each other. I saw the way Anton looked at Vivian, his eyes filled with adoration. I saw the way Vivian responded, her body language betraying a passion I hadn't seen in years. It was like watching a movie, a twisted romantic drama in which I was the unwitting villain. The microphones picked up their conversations. I listened to them discuss their plans, their dreams, their fears. I heard them talk about me, their voices laced with disdain and contempt. They spoke of my predictable routines, my boring job, my lack of spontaneity. They mocked my clothes, my hobbies, my taste in music. They painted me as a dull, unimaginative man, unworthy of Vivian's love. Their words cut deep, but they also fueled my resolve. I would show them. I would expose their hypocrisy, their shallowness, their utter disregard for the vows they had made. I would make them pay for their betrayal, for the pain they had inflicted on me. The pavilions were nearing completion. The final touches were being added, the last pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Soon, the city would become my canvas, my stage for revenge. And Anton and Vivian, the unsuspecting actors in my twisted play, would be forced to confront the consequences of their actions. I felt a surge of anticipation, a thrill that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I was playing a dangerous game, one with potentially devastating consequences. But I couldn't turn back now. I had gone too far. I had to see this through to the end, no matter the cost. The opening of the art installation was a resounding success. Critics praised its innovative design, its subtle commentary on the city's history, and its ability to engage the public. The pavilions became a popular destination, attracting crowds of visitors eager to experience the unique blend of art and technology. No one suspected the dark secret hidden within their sleek, modern forms. Anton, ever the cultural connoisseur, was among the first to visit the installation. He was impressed by its sophistication, its subtle interplay of light and sound. He wandered through the pavilions, his keen eye taking in every detail. He admired the mirrored surfaces, the interactive displays, the evocative soundscapes. He even commented on the clever use of hidden cameras and microphones, praising their ability to capture the unfiltered essence of the city. He had no idea that he was the subject of the surveillance, that his every move was being recorded, his every word scrutinized. He was so caught up in his own self-importance, so convinced of his own intellectual superiority, that he failed to see the trap that had been laid for him. Vivian, too, visited the installation, though she did so with a sense of trepidation. She had been feeling increasingly uneasy about her affair with Anton. The guilt was gnawing at her conscience, the fear of discovery a constant shadow in her life. She had tried to break things off with Anton, but he had refused to let her go. He had convinced her that their love was worth fighting for, that they could overcome any obstacle. As she walked through the pavilions, she felt a growing sense of unease. The distorted images in the mirrors seemed to mock her. The fragmented voices in the sound installation whispered her secrets. She felt as if the installation was watching her, judging her, condemning her. She tried to dismiss her fears, to tell herself that it was just her imagination. But the feeling persisted, a nagging sense of dread that something was terribly wrong. She hurried through the pavilions, eager to escape their unsettling atmosphere. As the days passed, the installation continued to draw crowds. People marveled at its beauty, its ingenuity, its ability to connect them to the city in a new and meaningful way. But beneath the surface, The dark undercurrent of my revenge was slowly taking shape. The hidden cameras and microphones were capturing a wealth of information. I spent hours reviewing the footage, piecing together the story of Anton and Vivian's affair. I saw them in their most intimate moments, their passion laid bare for all to see. I heard their whispered conversations, their secret plans, their betrayals. I was like a puppeteer, pulling the strings, manipulating the narrative. I was the architect of their downfall, the master of their fate. And as the final act of my revenge approached, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The time had come for Anton and Vivian to face the consequences of their actions. The city, with its ceaseless hum and vibrant pulse, became my accomplice. Its digital veins, the news websites, the social media platforms, the gossip blogs were the conduits through which I would disseminate my carefully curated truth. I began with subtle leaks, anonymous tips sent to journalists and bloggers known for their insatiable appetite for scandal. Grainy images of Anton and Vivian, captured by the strategically placed cameras in the pavilions, began to appear online. At first, the images were dismissed as mere speculation. The blurry figures identified as unidentified couple or mystery lovers. But I knew the city's gossip mill would churn relentlessly, fueled by curiosity and innuendo. I fed the flames, providing more images, clearer shots that left no room for doubt. Anton's distinctive profile, Vivian's fiery hair, they were undeniable. The whispers grew louder, the speculation more fervent. The city's elite, the patrons of the art world, the regulars at Anton's favorite haunts, they all buzzed with the news. Anton, the renowned art critic, the arbiter of taste, was embroiled in a scandalous affair with a married woman. And the woman, it was whispered, was the wife of a prominent architect. The scandal erupted like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Anton's reputation, once unassailable, began to crumble. His pronouncements on art, once revered, were now met with skepticism and derision. His colleagues distanced themselves, his friends turned their backs. The galleries that had once courted him now shunned him, fearing that his notoriety would tarnish their image. Vivian, too, felt the sting of public shame. Her social circle, once a source of comfort and support, now regarded her with suspicion and disdain. The invitations to exclusive parties and charity galas dried up. Her friends, once eager to share her company, now avoided her, their whispers following her like a curse. The city, once a playground of opportunity and pleasure, now felt like a prison. Every corner held a memory, every face a potential accuser. The weight of public condemnation was suffocating, crushing their spirits and their ambitions. I watched their downfall from the shadows, a silent observer of the chaos I had unleashed. The feeling was bittersweet, a mixture of satisfaction and regret. I had exposed their betrayal, but in doing so, I had also destroyed a part of myself. The Vivian I had loved, the woman I had thought I knew, was gone. In her place was a stranger, a woman tarnished by scandal and deceit. The initial shock of the scandal gave way to a chilling, methodical dismantling of their lives. Anton, stripped of his critical acclaim and social standing, found his career in ruins. The galleries that once clamored for his reviews now refused to answer his calls. His writing, once lauded for its incisive wit, was now dismissed as the bitter ramblings of a disgraced man. He was a pariah, ostracized by the very world he had once dominated. His fall from grace was swift and brutal. The man who had once held court at the city's most exclusive gatherings now found himself relegated to the fringes of society. He haunted dimly lit bars, nursing his bitterness and plotting his revenge. But his threats were empty, his pronouncements hollow. He was a lion without teeth, a king without a kingdom. Vivian's descent was more gradual, but no less devastating. The social ostracism was agonizing, a slow, suffocating death by 1,000 cuts. Her once vibrant social life withered, leaving her isolated and alone. The friends who had once flocked to her side now shunned her, their loyalty eroded by the tide of public opinion. Her professional life also suffered. The clients who had once sought her expertise now questioned her judgment, her reputation tainted by the scandal. Her carefully cultivated image of competence and integrity was shattered, replaced by a cloud of suspicion and doubt. The apartment, once a sanctuary of shared dreams and aspirations, now felt like a tomb. The echoes of their laughter, their whispered confidences, their shared moments of intimacy, they all mocked her with their absence. The silence was deafening, a constant reminder of her isolation. She tried to reach out to me, to explain, to apologize, but her words were met with a cold, impenetrable silence. I had retreated into my work, seeking refuge in the precision of lines and angles, the tangible reality of concrete and steel. I had built a wall around myself, a fortress of indifference that shielded me from her pleas for forgiveness. The city, once a vibrant tapestry of shared experiences, now felt like a battleground. Every encounter was a potential confrontation, every conversation a minefield of accusations and recriminations. They were trapped in a gilded cage of their own making, their freedom curtailed by the consequences of their betrayal. And I, the architect of their downfall, watched from the shadows, my heart a mixture of triumph and despair. I had exacted my revenge, but the victory felt hollow, the price too high. The woman I had loved, the life we had built together, they were gone, casualties of a war waged in the name of love and betrayal. My work on the pavilions had taken on a new dimension. It was no longer just a vehicle for revenge. It was a form of therapy, a way to channel my pain and anger into something constructive. I poured myself into the project, obsessing over every detail, every nuance. The pavilions became my obsession, my refuge, my reason for being. I started experimenting with new technologies, pushing the boundaries of art and architecture. I incorporated interactive elements that responded to the visitors' movements and emotions. I created immersive soundscapes that transported them to different times and places. I used light and shadow to create illusions, to distort reality, to challenge their perceptions. The pavilions became a living organism, constantly evolving, constantly adapting. They were a reflection of my own inner turmoil, a manifestation of my fractured psyche. They were both beautiful and disturbing, alluring and repellent. They were a testament to the power of art to both heal and destroy. I started spending more and more time at the installation, monitoring the cameras, adjusting the sound levels, tweaking the interactive elements. I became a ghost, a silent presence lurking in the shadows. The visitors were oblivious to my presence, their attention focused on the art, on the experience. But I was there, watching them, studying their reactions, feeding off their energy. I started to see patterns in their behavior, subtle shifts in their moods and emotions as they interacted with the pavilions. I saw how the distorted images in the mirrors triggered feelings of unease, how the fragmented voices in the sound installation evoked a sense of disorientation. I saw how the interactive elements played on their fears and desires, manipulating their perceptions of reality. I was like a scientist conducting an experiment, observing the effects of my creation on the human psyche. The pavilions were my laboratory, the visitors my unwitting subjects. And as I delved deeper into their minds, I began to understand the true power of my art. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about control, about manipulation, about shaping the way people saw the world. I had created a space where I could play with their emotions, their perceptions, their very sense of self. And the more I experimented, the more I realized the potential of my creation. The pavilions were no longer just an art installation. They were a weapon, a tool for social engineering. I could use them to expose hypocrisy, to challenge norms, to subvert expectations. I could use them to create chaos, to sow discord, to dismantle the very fabric of society. The possibilities were endless, and the temptation was overwhelming. I had tasted power, and I was hungry for more. The city was abuzz with the upcoming Art and Architecture Biennale, a prestigious event that drew artists, architects, and critics from around the world. My pavilions, already a sensation, were chosen to be a central feature of the Biennale, a testament to their innovative design and cultural significance. It was an honor, a recognition of my talent and vision. But for me, it was also an opportunity, a chance to expand my experiment, to take my manipulation to a new level. I began to modify the pavilions, subtly altering their design, enhancing their interactive elements, refining their psychological impact. I installed new cameras and microphones, strategically placed to capture the reactions of the Biennale attendees. I upgraded the sound system, adding subliminal messages, hidden frequencies that would tap into their subconscious fears and desires. I even experimented with scent diffusers, releasing subtle pheromones that would influence their moods and behaviors. The Biennale opening was a grand affair, a whirlwind of champagne receptions, gallery openings, and exclusive parties. The city's elite, dressed in their finest attire, flocked to the event, eager to be seen and to be seen with. Anton, despite his fall from grace, managed to secure an invitation, his desperation for relevance outweighing his fear of public humiliation. Vivian, however, was nowhere to be found. The scandal had taken its toll, leaving her a recluse, hiding from the prying eyes of the city. The pavilions were the undisputed highlight of the Biennale. Critics raved about their immersive experience, their ability to transport visitors to another world. They praised the interactive elements, the evocative soundscapes, the subtle play of light and shadow. They marveled at the way the pavilions seemed to anticipate their thoughts and feelings, responding to their every move. But they had no idea that they were being manipulated, that their perceptions were being subtly altered, their emotions carefully orchestrated. I watched them from my hidden control room, observing their reactions, analyzing their behavior. I saw the confusion in their eyes, the uncertainty in their movements, the subtle shifts in their moods. I heard the whispers, the gasps, the nervous laughter. I was the puppet master, pulling the strings, controlling the narrative. The pavilions were my stage, the Biennale attendees my unwitting audience. And as the event progressed, I felt a growing sense of power, a thrill that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I had created a world where I could control people's minds, where I could shape their perceptions, where I could manipulate their emotions. And as I watched them wander through the pavilions, lost in their own private realities, I realized that I had become something more than an architect. I had become a god. The Biennale became my playground, a controlled environment where I could refine my techniques, push the boundaries of my manipulation. I observed the attendees, categorizing them, analyzing their vulnerabilities, tailoring my interventions to their individual psyches. I became a master of suggestion, using subtle cues, subliminal messages, and environmental triggers to influence their thoughts and behaviors. I watched as they interacted with the pavilions, their faces reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions, curiosity, wonder, fear, confusion. I saw the way they responded to the distorted images, the fragmented voices, the interactive elements. I saw the way their bodies moved, their eyes darted, their hands trembled. I was reading their minds, deciphering their deepest fears and desires. I started to experiment with more targeted interventions, focusing on specific individuals, manipulating their experiences within the pavilions. I would isolate them from the crowd, guiding them through a carefully curated sequence of encounters, exposing them to specific stimuli, triggering specific emotional responses. I was like a conductor, leading them through a symphony of emotions, orchestrating their every move. I targeted Anton, of course, subjecting him to a particularly cruel form of psychological torture. I led him through a labyrinth of mirrors, confronting him with distorted reflections of himself, his face contorted in a grotesque mask of shame and guilt. I bombarded him with snippets of his own conversations with Vivian, their whispered betrayals echoing through the pavilion. I even created a holographic projection of Vivian, her image shimmering before him, her voice whispering accusations in his ear. Anton's breakdown was spectacular, a public display of humiliation and despair. He raved and ranted, his words incoherent, his movements erratic. He lashed out at the phantoms that haunted him, his anger and frustration fueling his descent into madness. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their amusement tinged with a hint of fear. They had come to the Biennale expecting to be entertained, but they had witnessed something far more disturbing, a glimpse into the dark side of the human psyche. I watched Anton's unraveling with a mixture of satisfaction and regret. I had exacted my revenge, but the victory felt hollow, the price too high. Anton, once a vibrant, charismatic figure, was now a broken man, his spirit crushed, his reputation in tatters. I had destroyed him, and in doing so, I had destroyed a part of myself. The Biennale continued, the crowds oblivious to the psychological drama unfolding within the pavilions. They marveled at the art, they debated the meaning, they celebrated the creativity. But I knew the truth. I knew that the pavilions were more than just an art installation. They were a weapon, a tool for manipulation, a reflection of my own twisted desires. And as I watched the attendees wander through the maze of my creation, I wondered who was truly in control, them or me. The Biennale reached its climax, a grand gala where the winners of the prestigious awards would be announced. The city's elite gathered in a glittering ballroom, champagne flowing, music playing, the air thick with anticipation. Anton, despite his disgrace, had managed to secure an invitation, hoping to salvage some semblance of his reputation. Vivian, however, was nowhere to be found. She had retreated to the safety of her apartment, her heart too heavy to bear the weight of public scrutiny. As the awards ceremony began, I activated a series of hidden mechanisms within the pavilions, a crescendo of orchestrated chaos. The sound system crackled, distorted voices echoing through the halls. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the faces of the guests. The interactive elements malfunctioned, their movements erratic, their sounds dissonant. The panic was palpable. Guests screamed and fled, their elegant gowns and suits trampled in the stampede. The city's elite, accustomed to the finer things in life, were reduced to terrified animals, scrambling for safety. Anton, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and rage, tried to escape, but he was trapped in a maze of mirrors, his distorted reflection mocking him at every turn. As the chaos reached its peak, I activated the final element of my plan. A holographic projection of Vivian appeared in the center of the ballroom, her image shimmering and lifelike. She stood there, her face etched with sorrow, her eyes filled with tears. She spoke, her voice amplified by the sound system, her words echoing through the hall. "I am here to confess," she said, her voice trembling. "I have betrayed my husband. I have betrayed myself. I have fallen in love with another man." The ballroom fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Vivian, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Anton, his eyes wide with horror, stared at the holographic image of his lover. He knew that his betrayal had been exposed, that his life was over. Vivian continued to speak, her voice growing stronger, her words filled with regret and remorse. She apologized to her husband, to her family, to her friends. She admitted that she had been blind, that she had made a terrible mistake. She promised to atone for her sins, to rebuild her life, to be a better person. As she finished speaking, the holographic image of Vivian faded away, leaving behind a stunned silence. The guests were left to process what they had just witnessed, to confront the harsh reality of their own lives. The Biennale, once a celebration of art and culture, had been transformed into a theater of tragedy, a stark reminder of the fragility of human relationships. I watched the scene unfold from my hidden vantage point, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. I had achieved my goal, not just by exposing Anton and Vivian's affair, but by shattering the illusions they had built, by forcing them to confront the truth about themselves. I had shown them the dark side of their own desires, the consequences of their actions. The Biennale was over, but my work was not. I had tasted power, the power to manipulate and control, and I was hungry for more. I knew that I had only scratched the surface, that there were still greater depths to explore, greater heights to reach. I was no longer just an architect. I was a creator, a manipulator, a god, and I was just getting started.